Welcome one, welcome all to DeFi Crypto and Airdrops Money Talks Edition. Today, we, as usual, have Taylor and Jeff. Taylor is a lawyer down in McKinney, Texas, specializing in estate law and also in real estate, owns a title company. Jeff is his business partner and life partner, you might say. Then he does specializes in traditional finance. And then, of course, those of you that are new to the show, there's little old me. I'm just an old vet that lives in the woods. And
I love Jeff so much. I have a statue of him right behind me.
Oh, look at that! Look at that!
Naked with his little
Nice.
wheelies.
Well, Taylor, do you kind of want to kick us off with kind of what's going on with the legislation that's making its way through DC this week? I think I might need to reset. I'm having some technical issues, so if you want to kind of just get us caught up on where we're at with the bills and kind of what that means for traditional finance and crypto markets.
Yeah, so just kind of give you guys a rundown of what kind of happened this week is because it got a little crazy because the first it was almost a guaranteed that the Genius Act was going to pass, but it didn't, which kind of was a little scary there for a little bit, but basically, the House held out on this idea that they did not want the Fed to be able to create its own stable coin. They wanted to keep the Fed out of the crypto markets. And so they were able to actually, there was a record breaking.
Who wanted to keep the Fed out of the crypto markets?
There was I think it was like around 10 House members, okay, a lot of them in the GOP, that were like, we're not going to vote for this if we don't get our anti-CBDC protections. And so it was actually like a record breaking, I think it stalled for like over 9 hours. It was the longest vote in history. Trump had to come down, get involved, but they were able to get most of it through. And because they added things, I believe it has to go back to the Senate if I'm not mistaken, but before they can go to Trump. But I mean, Trump's going to pass it, but I think everybody's pretty much on board that it's going to pass now.
Well, I mean, of course, Trump's definitely going to pass it. I mean, especially the stablecoin, aspect of it, because World Liberty Fi, him and his family's, kind of crypto business that they started. They have USD1, which is a stablecoin, and stablecoins in general. Just to frame the conversation, stablecoins in general are key to this future of finance that everyone is talking about and wants, where that would allow things like RWAs and DeFi and things like that to be a reality. Because without stable coins, crypto doesn't work. It's basically the bridge or the medium between the traditional finance and fiat and crypto and digital. Without that, you can't really bridge that gap.
Yeah, so I guess it hasn't passed completely yet, but everybody's in an agreement. Is that what's going on right now? Because this is the latest thing that I'm seeing right now. I don't know if they're supposed to vote on it today on the 17th. So, but I know the Genius Act is supposed to pass. Clarity Act is supposed to pass, and then the agreement is they're going to incorporate it or attach the anti-CBDC legislation, which is to keep the Fed out. So, but I don't see if it's actually gone through. Yeah, it looks like it has agreed to in the House, passed, agreed to in the Senate. So the Genius Act, it looks like, has passed.
And that's the one that we need. That's the one that has the stablecoin legislation. So, everything else is really just gravy. And, that's the one I've really been, watching, because I see the implications that it's going to have on DeFi. And, obviously I'm biased. I'm all about the future of DeFi.
Yes, and then but it was interesting that how the House held out so hard to not have the Fed involved in creating a stable coin. I wonder
No,
why that was such a big thing for them, but they claim that it's because they want to protect us, and but that's not true. There's probably
The naive, well, maybe I shouldn't say naive. Maybe if you wanted to give them the best of intentions, maybe their concern is that the Fed creates a stable coin and then years later they come back through and outlaw anything that's not the Fed stable coin.
yeah. I think probably Circle and was lobbying heavily to keep the Fed out.
well, and I can definitely see the pros and cons. I mean, I am not a fan of the Fed. It's especially with what's going on right now with interest rates and things like that. It seems like it's become a political arm as opposed to a body that has the best interest of the financial sector in our economy at heart. And I mean, you guys have a lot more visibility on that. I mean, what's your view of the Fed?
I think we talked a little bit about last time, but my whole thing is I'm not I used to be very, very against the Fed. I was like almost a little too crazy, I'd put it. Like I went a little too far on the whole thing. But my problem has become is I distrust Congress and our government more than the Fed now.
Yeah.
Just because they're just so corrupt now. So my flipping has happened because I just especially over the last, I would say 8 years, I have lost complete faith in our elected officials. They do not work for us at all. They don't do anything that we want right now with this whole Israel disaster of, Epstein and, his involvement, most likely being a Mossad agent and trying to cover up for that Israel basically is blackmailing our politicians. And then on top of that, basically every legislation that's coming through is what lobbyists does this benefit? And so do I want to give full financial reign over everything to a body of politicians? Politicians are not anybody necessarily that's done anything in their life. Usually they're usually just good ass kissers. So do I want to give full control of our financial system to them? Now, I'm not saying the Fed's the best option. I understand that. Why should the banking industry have this? Why isn't this why isn't the money going? Why isn't it an independent body of people that, I'd say maybe the banking industry isn't the best financial minds of today. But back when it was created, it probably was the best group at the time. But at the end of the day, not being able to understand who really owns the ownership of it, different things like that, there's huge problems there. But it's like right now, there's not really a group I trust to handle this kind of stuff. What about you?
I think that's a
What
pretty.
do you think, Jeff?
I agree with most of that. I think, or I understand. I think his take is accurate. I think I wasn't a huge fan of Powell. So the Federal Reserve in some aspects is, and again, I'm presuming for argument's sake that they're just trying to do what they're trying to. I'm trying to put cynicism to the side because the problem with cynicism with any of this stuff, even though I'm absolutely cynical, is we can't prove any of the assumptions when we start like, oh, well, they covered this up or they did this or they're doing that or whatever. But if you just take it at face value, the Federal Reserve has what's called a dual mandate. They're supposed to maintain full employment and they're supposed to maintain basically a target rate of inflation. which is sometimes those things are very countermanded, and they have pretty blunt instruments to do that. But I think what is scary, a lot of the people that are like anti-Fed, even some especially Austrian economists, people that are from the Austrian school, people that really are like, look, this is meddling in affairs, so to speak. I absolutely agree. The Fed is putting the thumb on the scale, right? The Fed is, or for
We
that
lost
matter,
Michael, so it's just us two again. No,
the Fed is putting both arms and legs and everything else on the scale as well. The challenge is this: it's sort of like saying the American tax system is screwed up, so therefore let's get rid of all accountants and CPAs and tax attorneys, right? In other words,
Hell yeah.
the Federal Reserve, right. But here's my point: that doesn't necessarily. Who knows what that does, right? But if we got rid of the Fed, it would make the Great Depression look like a sneeze, right? Because the entire world's financial systems are based on central banks, and since we're the reserves currency of the world, we are the most important central bank. So
Burn it all down.
There's a whole lot of people that are like,
we'll build back
let's
better.
just go back to gold or switch to Bitcoin or whatever. And I'm not saying that the end goal isn't actually a better idea for long-term, like multiple century money soundness. It's how do you do that surgery without killing the patient kind of thing, right? So you might say to me, you can come to me and say, hey, Jeff, you're fat and out of shape, so therefore I'm going to treat you like they treated me in boot camp. Go. But I'm 49 years old. I'll probably have a heart attack by mile 1, right? It doesn't matter if you're getting me in better shape if it kills me. So I do think that we need to appreciate that this is something that took a century to get into, and it's going to take some time to get out of it, even if we have the wherewithal to do it. That being said, just my soapbox on the Fed is this, guys. People are like, oh, it's all political. He cut rates for Biden before the election. Let's say you're 100% true. That's 100% correct. It's not, but let's just say it was. Rates went back up. Then in December, they tried to cut rates again. He cut rates again in December. And when he did, instantaneously, the bond market went up, not down. Rates went up because the bond market, which is all the buyers of bonds from individuals to institutions to foundations to endowments to sovereign wealth funds, companies, in general, the market came together and said, you know what? We're not really feeling all that confidence about how you guys are running your budget and how you're paying your bills. And so we don't want to get less money to lend money to the United States. As a matter of fact, if you're going to keep trying to do dumb crap, we want to get more money to lend money to you. If we tried to cut rates again, which would just
really quick, because it's to your point. It's something I want to point out, and then please continue. But part of the stablecoin bill was that stablecoins have to be backed 1-to-1. So, a lot of them, like Tether, they already use U.S. Treasuries to back. They're one of the largest holders, in fact, of U.S. Treasuries. So, it's part of this actually helps prop up the U.S. economy. Go. I just wanted to point that out.
100%. And so I'm just simply stating that there is a misnomer in the market, not in the marketplace, but in the general populace, that if tomorrow Jerome Powell decided to cut rates, all of a sudden we'd all have 5% mortgages again. That's not true. The rates they cut are the overnight lending rates from the bank. It's the intra-bank lending rate. So it's for banks to get money from the Fed and lend money back for the Fed or to other banks. It's simply to make liquidity easier in the banking system. Now, generally speaking, in normal times, that propagates through to all the other things. And eventually, in a relatively short order, there's knock-on effects where things change. But what really matters for mortgage rates, as an example, or auto rates, pretty much any kind of consumer loan, is what is the 10-year yield at? And the 10-year yield is moved by the market, not some dude, number one. Number two, it's a committee. And they actually publish, they don't tell you who did it necessarily, but they publish the votes. If you look at the most recent vote on what the rate should be over the next 3, 6 months, and a year, half the people think on the Federal Reserve think it needs to be higher. So the only way you really could fire somebody and get low rates is if you replaced everybody, number one. And number two, as soon as you do that, you're telling the rest of the world that our monetary system, what used to be independent, theoretically, is now openly obeying whatever the president says. Now, you guys listening that are Trump fans might think that's a great idea, but you got to remember we got term limits. So what happens when AOC gets in, or Bernie Sanders, or whatever? Or if you're a liberal, then obviously you're not happy right now with it. So my point is that we really need to maintain independence. I would love for us to get a more solid footing. I think the Fed needs to shut up and not talk so much. I don't think they need to change things so much. But yeah, it's a quagmire. We're not getting rid of the Fed anytime soon, short of a revolution.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I got an alert, so I was checking to see what if there was something on the markets. Well, real quick before we continue on, let's take a look because Taylor, before we went live, brought up some really good data as far as increases, on the crypto side. But before I kick it over to him, as you can see on my screen, as always, I start with DeFi Llama. This is showing the TVL of all DeFi, and we're looking at $246 billion. We're starting to curve up. You can see we were trending sideways for a long time, but we're starting to creep up. You're starting to see, inflows. Of course, the volumes on the decentralized exchanges like Aerodrome, Morpho, Uniswap, PancakeSwap, those are all starting to go up. And if we pop over to rwa.xyz, you can see, I mean, it's just nothing but up and to the right for tokenized real world assets. Again, if you're not familiar, this is the tokenization of private credit, the U.S. Treasury debt, U.S. Treasuries, like I was just talking about with this new stablecoin legislation that potentially is going to get signed into law. I think it will eventually. They just need to, cross the T's, dot the I's. But with this, then U.S. Treasury debt is going to be tokenized. And you're going to see that, and already is the case, that many of these like USDC, USDT, the major stable coins, they in large part, are backed by U.S. Treasuries because they have to be backed, due to this legislation. They knew, because all sitting in the same room, they're talking to legislators. They have the special interests, they have the lobbyists, and they have the ear of these politicians, and they're coming up with the mutually beneficial legislation that's going to make them all money. And those of us that are paying attention to these markets and what is being, we're early adopters, we're the ones that are going to benefit from all of this. So it's very, very important that you choose wisely whenever you are investing in a speculative market that we're in right now. We're transitioning to a more utility market, but the crypto market is so young, it is still very much speculative. I mean, Taylor, Jeff, I mean, would you agree with that assessment? Or, how far along do you think we are in that transition from, I think this is what crypto can do, to this is what crypto is doing?
Yes, there's one concern that I've had with the Genius Act legislation, and that is a lot of crypto is propped up not because it's big in the U.S., but it's big around the world. And one backlash could be with this new legislation. Now that USDC or anything has to be part of it, China might come out and go, well, if you're going to, our people can't use USDC. They got to use Chinese backed currency, and they legislate it. And then we might run into all type of problems like there, where you're going to have certain governments, as this comes out and they see, oh, this works really well, this can make, prop up our financial system. We're going to legislate the crypto market and make our citizens put their money in these places. And so you can have that consequence of what's going to happen, because right now we're slowly integrating crypto into, the mindset in America. But in Asia, it's been big for, past 5 years. It's really taken off. And if those countries start legislating things, you can have some issues, that start coming about. So that being said, it's something to be aware of is legislation. Why we might think, yes, it does create framework where we can work and do things. It can also have negative consequences down the road because other nations will start wanting to create their own legislation on what their citizens can do in the crypto markets. And
Absolutely.
it's one of these things. And then we still don't have any legislation on shit coins yet. Like this idea that, you can just create a coin and have no utility whatsoever. And people are throwing things in there. We also don't, we have very few controls on fraud that's committed. That's actually, we have a friend, their son, or we have a coworker that is very good friends with an individual whose son committed suicide because he lost about, how was it, $10 million worth of Bitcoin. He
I think
got
it was 7.
$7 million of Bitcoin that got stolen from the family. And he was so devastated by it, he took his own life because, there's no mechanism to get back that type of a loss. And so,
What and I mean, and that's the risk, with crypto. And I know that with a lot of these stable coins, part of the legislation, and I don't know what happened with it. Maybe you guys do, but there's something called a clawback feature, where it basically is something that I know institutions and banks and stuff like that wanted, to where they're able to, uh, basically pull the money back after it's been sent.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, crypto, again, you're very early in these markets. And so, there isn't a lot of safeguards in place, and that's what a lot of this legislation is about, is putting the legislation in place for protections for people like you and me. It's a double-edged sword. At first, crypto was all about, kind of anti-government, separate yourself, from the man, kind of mentality, the very libertarian mindset. But now that, everybody's all of a sudden excited that institutions are buying Bitcoin. It used to be Bitcoin was, the screw the institutions. And then as soon as the money started flooding in, everybody changed their tune. They're like, oh, institutions are, going to invest trillions of dollars in Bitcoin. Yay, institutions. So
yeah,
it's the evolution.
yes, it's. I mean, you want the big players to get in because that's how you're going to get rich. Like if you're in this and your goal is, to make a lot of money, well, it's going to be this way. But there is a lot of things that need to be done to ensure protections. The other day it's so easy to move money with crypto. That's one of the beautiful things about it is there isn't ability to claw back necessarily assets and different things because I can move my money to this institution, invest this way. Whereas when I was trying to move money off of my Charles Schwab platform, they're like, oh, $100,000 at a time. Well, then it
Yep.
goes to my bank, and then that bank holds it up for a while until they can guarantee that those funds are legit. And then it moves to the next institution to make sure everything. And it's like, we're going to have to get to some point in crypto where there are those protections because you cannot have people lose $7 million because someone hacks their account and there's no way to get this money back.
I texted Taylor, I'm sorry, Taylor. I texted you and Michael over the weekend from another advisor that I follow on X.
And I appreciate those feet pics, by the way.
Right. Oh, yeah, you're welcome. And he said, if you're going to buy whole Bitcoin directly, 99.99% of the time, you should store it on a physical drive. Just heard, and this isn't uncommon, a client of an advisor friend got their sizable account at Coinbase hacked and cleaned out. Bitcoin is gone and there's no recourse. I mean, I think there's, I am now firmly, if not completely, on the crypto is the future kind of train. But you're not getting. I mean, guys, if you had any idea that the level of conversation or the simplicity I have to go to with with boomers and above, particularly, that if they're not financially savvy, like they may have done really well financially, but I don't care if they're doctors or if they're, school teachers, if they're not in the finance world, words like correlation and deferred and AC, I mean, they don't understand any of it. Like, if, in other words, how about this? Crypto feels like, to me as an outsider, it's like, when you look at, one of the watches, you can see all the, like, with this transparent or translucent, so you can see all the parts moving.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel like in crypto, for me to be able to tell the time, besides just checking the price, but to be able to do DeFi or understand how to tokenize this or do that, move from this platform to that platform, it has this interface to get you an airdrop over here. It's 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 so convoluted unless you immerse yourself in it, that it's very, very, that's why the retail regular, not bad, not millennials and below, not people that were trading, I'm not counting anybody that ever bought an NFT, right? That's not, I'm talking about normal John and Jane America person.
Yeah.
They're overwhelmed by the complexity and they fear what they don't understand, and they're afraid they can lose, and they hear things like this. It's very similar, right? It's this. If when you swipe your card or tap your card to buy at Starbucks or wherever you go, right, at lunch, it's just instantaneous, and grandpa can do, everybody does it. But if the average consumer had to understand how the machine, decodes the chip, sends the signal to the charging bank that's going to go to the receiving bank that's going to do an intermediary and if they actually had to understand the mechanisms, they wouldn't do that. They would just use cash because that's beyond most people. And that's where crypto's stuck, in my opinion, is people don't understand it.
And that's a great segue, Jeff. Sorry to cut you off, but that is exactly what the topic of this episode is about. Is I want to touch on the, removing those barriers to entry for the people that you're talking about to allow them to get involved in crypto. If it's just investing in the different protocols, the different chains, the different projects, or if it's getting involved in DeFi or RWAs, tokenized stocks, tokenized treasuries, being able to buy those 24/7, 365, like Taylor was talking about, where you can only do $100,000 at a time in traditional finance. And it's going to take 5 to 10 business days for that to be liquid and you to be able to do what you want with it. Base yesterday, Coinbase, they just announced that they're launching a new Base app. Instead of the Coinbase wallet, it's going to be part of this new Base app. And they're integrating social media. They're integrating, the Coinbase app. They're going to be integrating DeFi. Morpho is, Morpho is a part of this. Aerodrome's a part of this. Mammo, the AI project that we just did a deep dive on. Me and California Jeff, Crypto Jeff, did a deep dive on, where it is fully automated. You have an AI bot that basically optimizes your investments for you. You deposit USDC, a stable coin, Coinbase wrapped Bitcoin, or the Mammo token, and it's constantly moving it around, from Moonwell to Morpho to Aerodrome, making sure that it's in the place that's going to make you the most money. So people that don't know about crypto and how it works and how to use wallets and things like that, they're just going to be able to direct deposit, part of their paycheck into there that they want to invest. And they can basically tell an AI, this is how much risk I want to take. Just, the same thing that they would tell you, Jeff. This is how much risk I want to take. That, this is, my financial goals. I want to retire at this age. And then the AI is just going to invest in, tokenized stocks, tokenized real estate, tokenized bonds, tokenized art, all these different things that you can invest, are going to be able to invest in crypto, and they can just sit back and watch it grow.
Yeah, like right now, if you want to get into crypto, like let's say you want to just buy IBIT. on in your portfolio. If you don't understand it, you don't want to get a wallet yet. You want to do it's the easiest way to hold Bitcoin without having to go get a wallet and deal with everything. And so that's my recommendation. If you're older, you don't want to spend the time to learn how to do this right now, but you want to be part of what's going on. But you got to be able to accept that this is going to be highly volatile. I mean, Bitcoin is settling down in the sense of it isn't as crazy it was. You know, you'd open it up and it's like down 15%. You're like, holy, smokes, this is crazy. And then there's ETHA, ETHA. So you can go and you can buy ETHA through your, investment accounts that you have. That's a way to do things. I think if you want to go stock wise, I think Master is still going to be a legitimately. I mean, as far as the narrative goes, I mean, if Master keeps going, they already own. I think he owns like 600,000 Bitcoin right now. Is that right? Let me look what Master actually owns. But to kind of put that in perspective, Master almost owns 1/20th of all Bitcoin that's out there. So this idea that people keep saying that Bitcoin's going to zero, well, I mean, I guess Master could go out of business, but Michael Saylor isn't going to be. They're not selling in their strategy, so they keep buying up a significant part.
If you look at exchanges, I mean, there is a supply squeeze. There is more people buying than Bitcoin that's being mined, and outflows. If you look at the exchanges, the Bitcoin being taken off exchanges, bought and taken off exchanges, and put into cold storage is going up. So there is I don't hold any Bitcoin currently. I'm, a little more risk, taking on a little more risk, but I am all in on altcoins. I'm all in on DeFi, and I'm trying to grow my bags because I'm looking to 10x my bags, and then I'm going to, into stables, and then I'm going to just slowly DCA into Bitcoin because that's going to allow me to lever up the amount of money that I can afford to put into Bitcoin. If I got into, all into Bitcoin right now, I might 2 or 3x my money. But with altcoins, I potentially can 10x or more. So I'm trying to grow my bags more. What's that?
Or zero your money. That's the other thing.
And that's the thing about, there's more risk. And I'm diversified. I have a lot of different projects, and yeah, some of them might go to zero. Some of them might more than 10x. Some of them might 20, 30, 40x. That's the risk you take when you're this early on an emerging tech, just like the internet. People, those of you that are old enough, people aped into the internet, and anything with a .com was just printing money. And then almost overnight, that bubble burst, and you had a few select ones that survived and made people enormous amounts of money over time. But you have to cast a lot of lines. Yeah. To find those, unless you have some sort of insider info. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And then there's, and so people that don't want to get it, there's going to be now with things starting getting legislation, you're going to start seeing institutions DeFiing, which are going to be able to do it far better than we can ever do it with their teams that they're going to have. I mean, you're going to have some really good ETFs that are going to come out, so you can get into good things. But the reality point right here is like, it's one of these areas where you have to be careful, because still to this day, this is the problem with crypto is, we don't have it in real world utility right now, which is which company or which group is going to really become that.
Yeah.
XRP is really good on social media. But my advice is, if people are trying to sell you on social media to buy into an altcoin right now, it
Beware.
it usually is not going to be a good deal, because that means the players are already in. And so, like, this idea that you have to, to find the gems that are out there, you're going to have to look around at things that you believe in, that you see, that you go, I see how this could be a reality of a good things. Like Aave, that's the one that does all the lending, right? Michael just froze. This is a problem with the podcast guy who wants to live in. Oh, there you are. That wants to live like you. You said, Michael, you do a podcast, but you live in the woods, all in the middle of nowhere, so you have to use satellite internet. But it's getting way better. It used to freeze all the time. But like Aave that's the lending platform, right?
Yeah, Aave is basically like Morpho. It's a borrowing and lending platform. So, lower APRs, as far as the yield that you earn. A lot of times it's, single digit, but it's very safe. So if you're lending, you get, full price appreciation, full exposure to price movement, but you're earning yield at the same time. So, there's a lot less risk.
Right now, Aave, like in a traditional finance sense, its signal strength is very strong. Because it has a real world utility. It's lending. Like, there's actually legitimate things going on where, and then XRP, yes, this idea that it's going to be this ledger that can be used, but you've pointed out over and over again, that's not attached to the XRP coin that you're buying.
Exactly.
It's this idea of understanding what you're getting yourself into when you're doing all this. But in the reality of doing all this, the hardest part right now is this idea that hacking can still, like, hacking's gotten really good, because I was on my Coinbase moving money and I got a text saying, do you want to approve this transfer of your money? And I was like, how in the world do they know I'm on Coinbase right now? Because I know it's not coming from Coinbase, because I know how Coinbase works. It does not send me texts. And I'm like, this could confuse somebody. So clearly somebody saw that I was moving money on Coinbase and then somehow knows my text messaging. And that's scary that they have that type of ability.
There is it's not necessarily a hack, but I forget what they call it, a SIM swap. So basically anybody that works at a cell phone company, if they know your phone number, they can get in there and they can see your phone number. They can make a copy of your SIM card and basically clone your phone. And so, it's there's actually something you can do real quick. You can call your cell phone company, talk to tech support. Even if they say there's no way to do it, insist to talk to somebody in their tech support, the regular customer service, that you want to talk to somebody in tech support. I did it. But there's a lock where you have to go through before you can make a copy of your SIM card. So, if you haven't done that and you're in crypto, call your cell phone company and put a SIM lock on your cell phone.
Okay, SIM lock. I need to do that. SIM lock on. Okay. I think we need to get to Jeff, because he can give us some things that are going on in the market. He has his bookmarked X thing that he does where he can kind of give us some things that are going on, because it's important to understand, like, you might be watching the market. We're going to all-time highs. Yes, we're having a blow off top again. We're having a blow off top into low volatility. When you have that happen, that's scary, because you can see 20% gains from right now, like on the Qs and stuff. But it's also when the rug pull happens and all of a sudden you wake up one day and, the Qs are down, 5% overnight.
And how much of that is just because our dollars? I mean, how much of the gain is because the dollar is just losing value? So it's offset, right?
Yeah.
But, I do have a few things I wanted to show you guys, though.
Okay.
Let me see here. So let's see if I can just share screen. So I actually was looking as you were talking, and I just saw this, which I don't know. I haven't done any research. It just came through. I have no idea if it's true, but that seems a little problematic. We're going to impose a 93.5% tariff on battery material from China.
Right.
So that's gonna be fun for EVs, or for that matter, any of us that use batteries on anything, right? Because
Yep.
we don't make that stuff here. We don't do that. But let's see. Let me
Well,
find.
maybe it'll be a good incentive for us to start.
It could be. I mean, that's probably the best argument for tariffs, right? Is it's sort of like take your medicine. This is the scariest thing. I highly recommend people. I actually posted this. I'll probably repost it. But this is the scariest thing I saw in the last week. All right. So I don't know if you guys know who Paul Tudor Jones is, but he's a billionaire self-made billionaire hedge fund manager. His real big call that kind of got him really started. He's big on shorting the market. So he bets on when bad things are going to happen and makes money. And he shorted the market for the 87 crash. So he's I think he's 70-ish, 70 maybe. Worth about 8 billion. Super, super smart guy. And
Jeff, whenever you speak, I'm just going to hold you in my arms right here.
And in this video on CNBC, so he's like a.
Did we lose Jeff?
No.
Oh, there he is. All right, there he is.
All right. So here's the punchline. This guy's on CNBC just talking about random stuff. The guy asked him a question about AI. All of a sudden, he goes off on this tangent about how he went to a conference, and he said Chatham House rules. I won't tell you who was there, but I'll tell you what was said, kind of thing. And apparently, there was only 40 people at this conference, and he said, leaders, geopolitical leaders, and thought leaders, and leaders in finance, leaders in tech. And when he said leaders in finance, he kind of referenced himself, right? So, like, it wasn't like he's not talking about Paul Tudor Jones and Jeff Reddick. He's talking about Paul Tudor Jones and other people of his ilk, right? So very, very, very high into the spectrum here. And he says he watched a panel of four representing the four largest tech. It was very, very, very senior engineers, like the lead engineers of four of the largest AI platforms, right? So I'm assuming, Chat and Grok and Google and all those, right? I don't know, but he said four of the largest LLM platforms. And they were talking about all these different things. And one of the things they said is they agreed on the platform that on the low end, these things they're improving 25 to 50% compounded per year. And on the high end, 500% per year is the growth sort of corridor we're in, right? So they talked about a few other things. They talked about the challenges of how do we do alignment, right? Making sure that AI doesn't become Skynet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So after the panel was done, the next thing they did is they did a series of propositions where they asked the people in the room to vote by go to the right side of the room if you think A, go to the left side of the room if you think B. And one of the ones they asked after this panel spoke for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it was do you think, to the 40 people in the room, remember some of the most powerful, wealthiest people on the planet, do you think that there's a 10% or greater chance that AI will wipe out 50% of humanity in the next 20 years or so? Something like that. I maybe paraphrase it, but I remember 10% was the threshold, and I think it was a 50% death rate from, AI releases some kind of pandemic or biohack or, starts a fake war, or the next thing you know, we're launching missiles. Who knows? The thing that blew my mind is he tells the guy, he's like, now, after listening to that, I moved to the side of the room that said, yes, I do think there's a 10% chance or higher that something really terrible might happen. AI is amazing. It's incredible. It's going to change the world. Maybe we cure cancers. I mean, who knows what might happen? Go to Mars. But there's definitely some risk, is what Paul's saying. And his entire job is managing risk, right? And so the guy's like, oh, okay, well, what the rest of the room said. He goes, well, 33 of the 40 went to the side of the room and said, no, it's less than a 10% chance. And the host is like, oh, well, that's good. And Paul goes, well, not really, because there was only seven of us that recognized there's a 10% chance or more, or agreed there's a 10% chance or more. And 4 of the 7 were the 4 engineers on the panel that are running the AIs right now.
So they have a little more knowledge
Right?
about the subject matter.
You know what I mean? It's like if we start talking about what's our next chance, what is our next chance and strategy strategically and tactically for war, and I vote over here and Michael votes over there, I think people should go with Mike because you served. You've done it. So it's that was my most eye-opening holy shit moment of the week.
Yeah.
Some other things that I thought were pretty crazy. I'm going to skip all the Epstein stuff. It'll just piss me off. This is scary. So those of you guys, I saw somebody that was trying to pimp people into the newest, greatest way of borrowing money and becoming their own entrepreneur and go get a bunch of Airbnbs. There were 3.2 million home buyers, according to the National Association of Realtors, in 2004. First-time home buyers. There's 1.14 now. We've had an absolute cratering in first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
That's huge. Let's see. 25% Americans are functionally unemployed, meaning, so if you used to be a programmer making 180 grand a year and now you drive an Uber and do DoorDash and, fill out surveys online, yeah, you have jobs, but you're not functionally employed compared to your capacity. What else? I thought this was pretty crazy. Let's see. I'm going to find it. It's something about here's robots that can run in China, so that's fun. Down a hill,
but they can only run in China. They can't run anywhere else.
They're not allowed to run here, just in China.
Just in China. China.
Let's see.
Can you buy one of those things?
China's printing money like crazy. So they're
Taylor wants to buy a Chinese running robot.
Yeah,
I told him he will. I understand. I'm going to buy. I want to get a Segway, so we all have our things, right? China's starting to print money.
Jeff wants to buy a robot that can cradle him like a baby and walk him around everywhere while he drinks while he drinks Oreo concrete shakes.
So here's what I was looking for.
That thing's $36,000.
Dude,
that's not bad. I mean, if it can do other things, I just don't want to watch it run around.
You see this thing I just threw up here?
Yes. Tell us. I love graphs.
The light blue is the percentage of your mortgage. Sorry, it's the light blue is currently where we are. It's the percentage of of income that the average person is having to pay to buy a home.
Holy
The dark blue is the percentage they have to pay to rent the same home. So when you wonder why all these homes are sitting on the market, it's because it's getting really hard to justify to people, hey, spend this kind of money when you could just live there for this kind of money. Until this, look at here's my main point of this graph. When's the last time we saw a gap like this for a couple of years? Right before 08. Oops. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on in the world. Nothing too insane since the last time I talked to you guys. I guess the last thing I'm worried about is I am worried about Japan. I don't know enough about Japan and global macro markets to speak intelligently on it, except for to say that their entire economy, because of their demographics and some other issues, is completely contingent upon very, very, very low rates. And even they are having their rates explode north. Now it's relative, but Japan's gone from 0.25 to 1.75 in a year. I mean, it's very problematic because what that portends is that they're going through some very significant economic stress, and they're a very big company. Right? I mean, they're a very big country, right? And they're a very large holder of U.S. Treasuries. So there is a potential for some contagion there if they really had a massive problem. The reason, by the way, their late rates are still so low is because their Fed, the Bank of Japan, buys unlimited quantities of their stock market, of everything. But at some point, that trick may run out, and then we have to deal with it. So that's kind of my report for now. I don't think I have anything else worth really sharing with you.
No, that's freaking awesome information, because that's what a lot of people are worried about right now. Is basically everyone's being relegated to having to rent. And that's kind of why a lot of people with Powell are so upset with him. Is with rates being as high as they are, it prices most people out of the. Oh, hold on. Oh, I'm not sharing mine anymore. Um, it's forcing a lot of people out of the market. They're not able to buy, and
Oh,
so
I want to be very clear. If I believe that the Federal Reserve could lower rates and that would result in lower bond rates and lower more, I would 1,000% be on it. I just am afraid that we've crossed a Rubicon on that until we get some other things under control, including our budget a little bit. I don't think the bond market's going to follow, and I don't think rates are going to go down. I do think rates will go back down, but I think it's going to take a recession to do it.
yeah, and I won't pretend to understand a lot of that stuff. I mean, that's definitely why I really enjoy having you here and Taylor here. You have a lot better grasp on kind of the macro traditional economics, and I'm very much focused, obviously, on the DeFi and the crypto and things that pertain to that. But really quick, I mean, I know if you guys can't go longer than the hour, then we only got about 9 minutes. A little.
We lost him for a second here.
This episode,
Hey,
and
you broke out there for like 20 seconds.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right, so yeah, we only got about 8 minutes left in the hour. Unless you guys are able to stay longer. I'm not sure what your schedule's like, but so I do want to talk about this new app, because I really think that this is going to be the beginning of removing those barriers to entry. I mentioned this at the very beginning. Removing the barriers to entry that Jeff very astutely brought up, that there's a lot of people out there because of age and lack of knowledge about technology and things like that have been keeping people out of the crypto market. And as a lot of these companies like BlackRock, the largest company as far as assets under management in the world, they are investing heavily in these technologies. They're investing in Plume, they're investing in Ondo, they're investing in many projects that are focused on the tokenization of treasuries, stocks, bonds, all of these things, because they see what's coming. They know how the market is evolving. They want to make the illiquid liquid. And Taylor, brought up, not too long ago, his pain points about trying to make his investments in the traditional markets liquid, to where he can use those to do whatever he needs to do. 5 to 10 business days. You can only take $100,000 at a time. You got to pay fees, penalties, and there's just all these hoops you have to jump through. With tokenized assets, that isn't going to be as much of an issue. So Coinbase, they launched a new app. It's going to allow social media, influencers. I hate that term, but you can't, slight the power that social media has. So they are integrating social media into it and allowing people to use crypto to tip their favorite influencer. They were giving examples of 17 cents for liking something, and
Man, he's having a hard time today.
believe it was on stage. Shopify, if you're not familiar, is a huge market, and they are, accepting crypto. So, you can shop online. It's not going to be long if they haven't done it already, to where, a lot of it's going to have to do with legislation, and probably this stablecoin legislation, where Amazon, and other, online stores, Visa, MasterCard, Coinbase is about to launch a credit card. I believe it's a Visa card, to where you're going to be able to spend your crypto, just like you usually do now, by by swiping your card or tapping your card, you're going to be able to use your crypto just like you do use your bank account. This is removing those barriers to entry. Instead of having your money sit in a savings account where it only earns a fraction of a percent, on Coinbase, you can direct deposit part of your check and you earn from 4 to 5% APR just for letting your money sit there.
So
go ahead.
I just have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I really think first of all, the opportunity for everybody listening, right, is the delta between where we are and mass adoption. Because when mass adoption really happens, all these yields go down and all kinds of other stuff, right? So my question to you is, do you think it's solvable? Because I mean, nobody I know over 50 that's not already into crypto is going to start, buying things, downloading onto a hard drive and then air gapping it, right? That's just a pain. They're busy. They got money. They're doing fine, right? So my question is can the crypto community / industry solve the hacked into Coinbase and taking the money and you're screwed situation without getting rid of some of the anonymity and sort of free flow, sort of be not beyond the law, but kind of the ecosystem that a lot of the crypto early adopters really like, as far as like, hey, I mean, yeah, it's all transparent, it's all public, but it's also how do I say that word? It's anonymous, right? Anonymized, however you say that word. And I wonder if that's how they're going to solve that. Because, for example, if somebody hacks Bank of America and you've got 100 grand in Bank of America and you can prove that somebody hacked it and took your money and your money's gone, yeah, Bank of America is liable. Because and
eventually there's probably going to be some sort of legislation that dictates, that if they're going to hold your money like a bank account, because like Moonwell is one that is gearing up because they want to be basically a bank. They might have to be FDIC insured. They might have to do some of those things that traditional banks and whatnot have had to do.
Which gets to my second part of the question, which because I thought that's what you're going to say, or something similar. But the reason why banks can take that risk is because of all the way the systems work, right? If an ACH or a wire goes out of my bank, even if someone pretends to be me, there's all kinds of things you can do to track where it went. Now you can't really get the money back easily if somebody then goes to another bank and withdraws it in cash. But it's certainly much easier to track traditional finance with all the safeguards than I would say it is probably crypto. As far as getting the actual money back.
Well, now that's where the clawback. I think that's why there's such an emphasis on clawback, because with clawbacks, if that scenario happened, and say that you somehow pretended to be me and there was a fraudulent transfer, they would be able to claw back that money from that that party that stole it. So that's, I think, why there is a lot of this back and forth, because crypto being a new technology, it's much more transparent than traditional finance. Everything can be seen on chain by everyone. So, I mean, you could even, if you had the know-how, you could even track where your money went. Whereas, traditionally, you would have to hope that, the bank or some, legal entity would, be able to do it for you. So, there's not a whole lot different in that aspect. I mean, we're basically using digital money already. It's nothing new. Swiping a card, with ones and zeros in your bank account is pretty much the same as crypto. Crypto just adds functionality. It adds liquidity. It adds, it enhances, kind of what we're already doing.
Are you seeing in the comments, Victor says, the reason banks do that is because the government always bails them out by printing more cash. Just buy your cold wallet and chill. And then Jay responds with, I'll take the risk with financial sovereignty, which I get your gentlemen. I understand your point. My argument is the average Joe, the sheep, aren't going to do that. And until they adopt crypto, Bitcoin's not going to 20 million a coin or whatever the penultimate valuation is, right? And so I'm just saying, how do you have that watershed moment for the people that are fat and happy and aren't worried about fiat in the same way that the folks on here are, right? And
Well,
I get it. For the people here have solved the equation, right? They're like, they got their methodologies and they're good, but you have to bring more people in the ecosystem if you want to have continued development and growth, right?
well, everyone's going to, be a part of this, one, if they like it or not. I mean, it's happening. Crypto is being integrated into the traditional finance system. It's coming. Most people aren't even going to be able to tell that they're part of it. Again, that's why I wanted to talk about this new Coinbase app is, this is, yes, this is attached to Coinbase where, you have to on-ramp your money into Coinbase, but banks are building on Ethereum. Banks are building on blockchain to where, your money, when you deposit it into JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, they're all building on this. And so when you deposit your money, like you always do, there's just going to be a time where they flip a switch and all of a sudden, your money is going to be moving across the blockchain as opposed to what it runs on now. So, these barriers to entry are being removed to where people aren't going to have to be knowledgeable. They're not going to have to know about crypto and cold, wallets and hot wallets and, air gapping and, all these different things. It's just going to be a part of the financial system. And those of us that were early adopters are going to profit. And, because if we invested in the right projects and, that's just kind of the way it is. The U.S. government isn't going to spend as much time and resources on what they have, building this, these bills, for crypto, unless these institutions, the big money, and the lobbyists and special interests that keep them in power, unless they're pushing. There was years where crypto's been around, decades, or over a decade, that crypto's been around, and they were fighting against it. All of a sudden, one day, they're writing legislation and talking about how awesome crypto is. That wasn't because they had an aha moment. That was because banks and institutions started pushing them in that direction. So again, like it or not, it's coming. It's going to be a part of our traditional finance and DeFi, and crypto is just going to become this retarded fish frog that we're all going to live amongst. So, any closing statements from either of you?
Yeah, I'm good. I appreciate it. I thought it was good. I like what we discussed today, and I'm very happy to hear there's AI to do the heavy lifting for me.
Yeah.
I'm
I know
in.
Taylor.
Taylor's sounds great.
I know, right? So Taylor's in the zone on something. He has been for a minute. What are you in the zone on, Taylor?
I'm trying to find my robot.
You're trying to find a Chinese robot, running robot?
Trying to find my robot.
Yeah.
That's going to mean a lot different things in a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I want the ones that run around there. Does it do laundry? That's my big question.
And as far as intimidating, imitating you and stealing your crypto bags, I assume your password phrase is "I kill bears with my bare hands."
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what I usually use.
Exactly.
All right. Good enough. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Well, I appreciate it all, and I want to thank all of you out there, the couple hundred people we have watching across all of our different channels. As always, appreciate you all coming. Taylor already bailed. There he goes. I was like, he found a robot. He's off to go get it. I gotta go chase
How do I get this thing?
Like tackle it. Go back to his rugby days. But yeah. I appreciate you all showing up and supporting the channel. We definitely try to put out some good info for you all. And with these episodes on Thursday, it's really meant to tie it all together. I know that usually we talk about crypto. We're all very bullish on crypto, but it's important to look at the whole picture. Zoom out, look at the whole picture. look at traditional finance, look at DeFi, look at, Bitcoin and crypto in general, the technology as a whole. And then of course, look at it where some of us are going to make a lot of money. And, you need to understand, ahead of time what you're going to do, how you're going to lock in that value and protect that value. And people like Taylor that do estate planning, that show you how to mitigate your tax burden, using different vehicles like LLCs and C corps and things like that, to where you can protect yourself. So please, by all means, make sure you're always educating yourself. If it's not here, find somewhere. But education is key, and as this ecosystem evolves and is integrated into the existing system, it evolves so fast. You need to keep up, especially if you're invested in it. I see it all the time, and I'm not going to say the name of it, but there's a certain crypto project that I just see too many people that are not actually knowledgeable about that project and the fundamentals of how it works. They just saw on social media somebody hyping it up that this magic switch is going to get flipped, and they're going to get rich overnight. Owning a small amount because there's going to be buybacks, and it's needed for cross-border payments. And yes, you're going to make money on it, but do not think that holding one crypto is going to make you rich. You have to do your research. Do not be lazy, or you are going to be somebody else's exit liquidity. So with that, thank you all. Appreciate you all. Yep, you all know what I'm talking about. But until next time, I appreciate you, Taylor. I appreciate you, Jeff. Veteran Crypto out.